everyone, it's Priya here, and in today's video I'm going to be using the Derwent Tinted Charcoal Paint Pen set to create a illustration of a hedgehog. Now I'm using this particular set of paints just because it is charcoal, but it is put into pans like you would have watercolors, and they have got tints of other colors to them. So there's mostly gray tints, but they've got some blues, some browns, and some yellowish browns as well. There's a lot of different tones. There's even some greenish tones as well. But I'm going to be using mostly the grays and the brown tones just to get the colors down for the hedgehog. Now I am going to be drawing and painting with the supply in my regular sketchbook that I'm using currently. And I'm just pinning down the book with some clips just to hold it down so that the book lays flat. And I'm going to be using some round brushes as well as one flat brush for this illustration. Now, when you are working with charcoal or graphite in your sketchbook or even on a single sheet of paper, I would highly recommend that you use a fixative to keep the image from smudging, or even with the sketchbook using a sheet of paper between the different pages, or just keeping a sheet of paper in there, or using some tracing paper as well, just to keep the image from transferring to the other side of the next page. Now, I'm going to be using the fixative, and I'm also going to have a sheet of paper between the two pages. Now you can see I'm just doing a rough sketch of a hedgehog, and I'm using my graphite pencil just to do a rough sketch. Now this I usually don't do. I go straight in with my image when I'm drawing it. But if I want to really practice, and this is a technique you could use and practice with it in a separate book on a separate piece of paper, just draw a rough sketch of the subject you're drawing or the animal and get the proportions right, and just try to get an understanding for the shape of the body, the structure of the body, the hairs, the direction of the hairs, the eye placement, and just get all of the proportions accurate. That will help you to go in when you're doing your main illustration to get it more accurate by taking this step. So that's why I'm just drawing it in my sketchbook. It's just a rough sketch to get an idea of the subject and familiarize yourself with the subject before going into your main illustration. Now you can see with the main illustration, I just drew an outline and I just put the placement of the eyes, the nose, and the ear, just to get an idea of where everything goes. I'm not really going into detail and adding all those details. That'll be done later when I add different layers and when I'm going in with the charcoal paint pens. Now I'm using the grayish tone. This is a grayish tone, but it has a hint of brown in it, just to cover the entire base of the drawing. So I'm covering the entire hedgehog with that color. That's just for me to get the base color in so that everything is covered and the white of the paper is not showing through. And then I'm using that same amount, not so watered down, which is more concentrated, just to get in some of those details and shadow areas or the darker areas. So really highlighting the area with the ear, the nose, the chin area, and then going in with some of that for the forehead and the cheek area. Now I'm adding a bit of those shadows. Now remember, the hedgehog's face and cheek and chin doesn't have the spikes that the body has. So remember to keep in mind that you need to have longer hairs there on those areas, and you have the spikes across the body, or the spiky hairs across the body. Now I am going to come in and add multiple layers to this entire drawing of the hedgehog, but this is just the base layer that I'm doing, or not the base layer, but the second layer, where I'm starting to add in those little spiky hairs that the hedgehog has. Now you can see, and I'm going in with the round brush, and I'm just adding in the nose, darkening that up, and then I'm starting to add in those little spiky hairs across the entire body. Be careful when you are adding hair or fur. Remember to always paint it in the direction that it's growing. So look at your reference photo and see the direction that the hair is growing in, and the way that it's shaped on across the body and across the muscle structure and skeletal structure of the animal, and then paint it in that way. By doing this, you'll allow your illustration to look more realistic, and you'll get more accurate representation of the animal when you are done with your illustration, and it'll look more realistic and three-dimensional. So you can see now I'm just going in and covering the entire hedgehog using my round brush. I'm just going in, adding a more concentrated amount of that same color. It's a brownish color, a brownish gray from the pan set, and I'm just going in all over and covering as much of the hedgehog's body as I can. I'm going to cover the entire body, and then I'm going to go in afterwards and add more layers, where I'm going to really try to get that look of the spiky hairs of the hedgehog. Now, looking at this, you may think, but it looks like spikes already, but it still needs to have layers to look more, to have more depth, because the hedgehog is very, if you look at their spikes and hairs, they got a lot of depth when you look at their bodies. So it's not just like, you know, white and with spikes on it. So this is really not complete. I mean, I'm looking at it now and I can definitely say this is not complete. It does have the look of spikes, but it's not going to look right until we add more layers and add some washes of color. And I am going to use other, like a white jelly roll. You can use any white gel pen that you have to do the spikes. I would prefer to use that than using gouache or anything like that, because that can end up, you know, you picking up some of that charcoal from the base layer. Because remember, charcoal, if you try to go over it with a heavy hand, with pressing hard, you are going to lift up or move that charcoal around on the paper. So you can see now I'm going in and I'm adding darker areas and some shadow areas. And I'm doing this knowing that I'm not pressing very hard. I'm covering up some of that white of the paper because I don't want that to show, and I want to see the hairs, and it's smooth, it's softening those little spikes up a bit, but that's not a problem because I am gonna really bring that out again with the jelly roll that I'm gonna use later on. And then I'm going to add more washes of color over that just to tone it down in certain areas and, you know, make it look a bit smoother in certain places that I want it to look smoother in. Now, while that's drying, I'm going in and just defining the ear and the eye as well. Make sure that you are using a jelly roll that has flowy ink that's flowing well. I did try 2 of mine and they were working, but not very well on the charcoal, because they sort of are slipping on the charcoal and they're not catching onto the paper. So be sure to try out on a separate piece of paper what works or what pens you do have, and try that on that to see how it works on charcoal or on this particular charcoal paint pen, and see how you can go ahead and work with it for your illustration. A lot of people may say that you know, you're using the pen on the charcoal. I am not, this is in my sketchbook, I'm not selling this piece of work, so I'm not really worried about the longevity of it, and it's going to be in a sketchbook and that should preserve it, and I shouldn't have any problems in the future. So I'm not too worried about that going forward with my, you know, with my art. I mean, it's in a sketchbook and I'm not selling it. It's just for me to paint and to share the process and how and teach others. It's not to, you know, that I'm going to sell this. It's in my sketchbook. So yeah, going back to the illustration, you can see I covered the entire hedgehog using the direction of the shape of the hairs, the direction they're growing in, using the gel pen. And then I also added the little highlight for the eye. And then I also am now giving a little bit of washes. So I'm just giving some washes through the body of the, all over the body of the hedgehog, just so that I have got a, you know, you have some dimension to the image, some depth to the hair. I don't want to cover up those white pens too much. It must have a bit of, you know, some softness certain areas. So that's what I'm doing now by using some of the other brown tones in the set of on this paint pen set. So you can just decide what colors you want to use depending on your reference photo, and also depending on what you want to use as an artist, and deciding what colors you would like to use. So that's what I'm doing for this set. You can see these are the colors I use mostly. I am gonna now swatch them all on the top of the page just so that I can remember what colors I used. I used quite a few of the colors just in different areas, on the neck, on the forehead, on the body, on the lower part of the body, on the upper part of the body, on the side. So it's a blend of different colors, and it all depends on you and your reference photo and how you want to represent the hedgehog and what supplies you're using. I mean, you could use any supply, like watercolors you could use for this illustration. You could use gouache. It doesn't have to be done with this specific supply. I also got the Derwent Tinted Charcoal pencils. And that set, okay, it's a really old set. The cover may have changed, but the pencils, you can use them as well. You can see I'm using some of the more of a yellowish brown color just to add a bit more yellowish color to certain areas. And I'm just blending it out with my finger because it is charcoal. And then I'm just, you know, adding that to my swatches on the top. Feel free to use whatever works for you. So I guess that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found it helpful. If you have, don't forget to like and share. It really helps the channel out. Also, if you'd like to see other art and art inspirational videos that I put up on my channel, then you could consider subscribing. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you won't miss my next upload. Also, I do have a Patreon, so if you want to have a look at that, you can find the link in the description box below, and you could see if that's something you'd be interested in. That also helps a lot to support the channel. So thanks again so much for watching. Till the next one. Bye!